Right guys, so sorry, yeah, we're going to do a re-upload because the audio last time I did was terrible thanks to boy racers in their chavvy cars going up and down the bypass. I felt like I was living in the middle of the Nürburgring. So hopefully this will be a little bit better because I'm doing it at night, it's dead quiet. So I thought it was about time I did this, a video for people to understand RetroArch. We're going to do a series of videos, so I'll start off with like a beginner's guide for noobs, and then we'll work through and do more advanced stuff later on, because there is quite a learning curve, and I know other people have done videos, guides on RetroArch, but they left out some points that I think are quite important, and I never saw them come back and address it. So we're going to get through quite a bit, although it's a beginner's guide. I'm not going to cover all the platforms that's available. RetroArch could be run on many different systems. I only really focus on the PC and the Android side of things. But if you're here, you should really know what RetroArch is anyway. That's why you're here watching the video, because you don't want to read, you want to see someone do it and explain it. So yes, it's software that lets us play retro games from systems from days gone by, and it's awesome. It is one of my must-have apps on my phone. It gets some flack, this software, which I think is unjustified. I can kind of understand why, but yeah, I need it. I have to have it on the phone. Although there's other emulators, we can get standalone emulators. That if there's just some games I need RetroArch to play them, otherwise I just don't have a chance in hell of playing them on my phone. So we thank the guys that work on this because it's absolutely free, and the guys that maintain it and keep making it better and better. Can't thank them enough. So you might have tried RetroArch, but there's good reasons to come back to it if you abandon it. Many features have been added in recently, so stuff like using your disk drives to play games directly. Got it written there. In addition to this, you'll soon be able to run original game disks from RetroArch and back up the games as well. That's kind of cool. They talk about the AI service. That might not mean anything to anyone, those two words, but if I say Google Translate instead, you go, oh right, translates the languages. So yeah, we've got lots of Japanese games. Some have been translated by hobbyists over time, and the Japanese are a funny bunch. They like to put English into their games for some of it because they think it's cool, but most of the text is Japanese. I have no idea what they're talking about. So to have that feature built into RetroArch to translate the games on the fly is amazing. Multi-touch light gun support, so for our phones and tablets we can play gun games tapping the screen to shoot the bad guys. So awesome, absolutely awesome. So yeah, feel free to come to their website. I'll link it in the description so you can get to the download stuff, because you need to get hold of the software. You need to decide what you're going to use as the platform that you want to use for emulation. So I've done emulation for many years, more years than I want to admit, but these days I basically focus on the PC, which is the best way to do emulation. Opens up many avenues to you, all sorts of different software we can use. But yeah, I use the PC, which is the best way, and I've got an Android phone and I've got a Shield TV. So Windows and Android are what I focus on, but we can see lots of cross-platform support. So you probably own something that can run RetroArch. You'd be surprised. So lots of guys have done guides on installing the software and setting it up, so I don't think I need to go too in depth on that. Your PC might not necessarily be the same as mine. I use Windows 10 64-bit, but you might have Windows 7 or what have you. What's important, you know what version of the OS it is, whether it's 32-bit or 64-bit, and then download the software. So you can do the installer, you can download that, click the file and install it. Any other software, click next, tell it where you want it to go, and then it's magically installed. And there's a download option as well, which is very similar, but it just gives you a zip file that you can extract, and that folder you can just run RetroArch from in there. So you might be thinking, why would I do that? Well, you might have a USB memory stick or an external hard drive that you want to swap between your gaming PC at home and a laptop that you have. So those people that work out on the road and you stay in hotels, you might find it convenient to be able to switch that drive between what you have at home and your laptop when you're away working. So it's just there for convenience, really. You decide what works best for you. So I'll ignore the other platforms, and we're just going to talk about Android quite quickly. It's kind of important. There's a recent development. Google, in their infinite wisdom, have now said that all apps must have the 32 and the 64-bit version baked into the app. and whatever is native to your device, that is what will be used. So for a very long time I've been using the 32-bit version of RetroArch, even though I'm on a 64-bit device, but now I'm being forced to use the 64-bit, and you might think, well, that's not a problem, but it is. The 32-bit version's had a lot more love than the 64-bit, so I don't want to get too geeky too quick, but there's some issues with some of the cores. Some cores are missing, some stuff doesn't work quite right, and the LibRetro team do admit they struggle to find people to compile the cores for the 64-bit version, so it is a little bit of an issue at the moment. But if we look at it this way, the fact Google are forcing the issue should mean that the 64-bit will be sorted out sooner than it would have otherwise, because people are being forced to use it, if that makes sense. So currently on my Shield TV I use version 1.7.7, the 32-bit version, so it will still work with Hyperspin the way I show off the games, and I've got access to all the cores and play the games that I want to play, and I will upgrade to 1.7.8 once it's sorted. So those of you that want to do that, get hold of the files, get the old version. We're going to scroll past all the other platforms available. We've got other downloads. So I've got the stable downloads, which is what we're going to go into. The nightly builds is literally the cutting edge, the bleeding edge, the daily updates, what people are working on. It's not necessarily the most stable. So we'll just come into the stable section. 1.7.7, Android. So RetroArch. Arch 64 is the 64-bit. I certainly don't want that on the top one, which is 32-bit. So we can download that, put it on a memory stick, copy it over the network, whatever you want to do to get it on your Shield TV. Just download it directly on your phone, whatever you're using. I don't know. So I know we're going off on a bit of a tangent here, but it is important because I know a lot of people watch the videos because of what I do with the Shield TV. So if you're going to do this, the first thing I'd suggest is go into the Google Play Store. I'm on my Shield TV, and disable the auto update, because we don't want to go from 1.7.7 to 1.7.8. That would be pointless, so we're going to stop it doing that. Then you can install the software with Explore, whatever file manager you like, but don't open it yet. Very important you don't open it. We're going to go into the app section when it's installed, long press A, go into the info section, go to the storage and check where it's been installed to. Now I use adopted storage, an external USB drive has been adopted, so it was on there, and I had to say no, I want it on internal, and then it moved it over for me. Very important you do that before you load RetroArch. It's incredibly important. So I'll explain why as we go through the config settings later, but it will save you a massive headache, so make sure you've done that. Once you load it on your Shield TV, it might complain that you're missing assets. Use the online updater. Well, don't worry, we're going to get to that. That's the first thing on the to-do list. I'm now in RetroArch, but remember I'm on the PC at the moment, so I've got a keyboard in front of me. I'll use the arrow keys up, down, left, right to navigate, enter to select, backspace goes back, the escape key, do not push that, it'll quit. So what we want to do is get us up and going. So if you're on your phone, the Android phone, it might look a little bit different. You'll notice there's some tabs at the bottom. There's like a cog, which is for like the configuration page for those settings, but you should get the gist of what I'm talking about as you see the stuff on the screen. It's pretty similar. So what we need to do is go into the online updater first of all. A couple of things you want to take care of. So there's update assets. Those of you on the Shield TV and it was complaining, do that. That will fix the asset problem. It will download the zip file and extract it for you. But we want to get the core info files updated. So this is just the list. The cores are what allow us to do all the different systems. There's a core for every system. So get the latest list downloaded now. So select that, let it do its thing. We've got other updates here that you might want to do as well. So I don't really want to get into the super geeky stuff, but overlays are like borders that go around. So if it's a 4:3 game on a widescreen panel, you'll have black bars at the left or right. So overlays will hide those black bars with graphics. We've got shaders, which are like visual effects that can make the image you're looking at look like it's an old TV, like a CRT monitor, the old cathode ray tube TVs we used to have, like the scan lines, stuff like that. There's loads of cool effects that can be done, but that's more advanced. We'll worry about that in a later video. We just want to get some cores set up and be able to play some games. So we'll come into the core updater. So the first thing I see is Amstrad CPC. It's actually the first personal computer I ever owned, a long time ago now, but I do remember it well. Lots of nostalgia for me, but it might not mean anything to you. But I see Caprice 32 there. I know that's the best core to use, but this is where the confusion's already starting. We can get the feeling this is quite daunting because there's so many options and so many choices. What do we do? Well, this is why we have communities, and you'll find me in the Hyperspin forum. We've got an Android section and we all try to help each other out, say what we use for what and what settings we use to help people, because not all of these cores are actually easy to set up. Some are easier than others, so sometimes we do need to help each other along. It's kind of why I do these videos. So we can actually see an awful lot can be done. If you're a beginner, I would seriously suggest avoid arcade games to begin with. These are probably the most finicky. Start with something simple like cartridge-based systems, like a Mega Drive or something like that. Arcade is very cool, the games, so we'll just talk through some of these cores. It's Final Burn Alpha. One I particularly like is Final Burn Neo. So this will be able to do the Capcom Play System 1, 2 and 3. They were arcade boards that had all sorts of Street Fighter games, lots of cool Capcom games. So it's great that the core can do those. It will also do the cave games as well, like shoot 'em ups, vertical shooters. So very useful core. It can do quite a lot of arcade games. MAME is multiple arcade machine emulator, and this is why it's kind of confusing, the arcade, because we have ROM sets, different numbers, the increments go up, and these are meant to be with a certain version of name. That's why we have the years there, so it gets a little bit confusing, and even I forget which ROM set goes with which one. So yeah, we'll come back to that at a later date. Don't bang your head against a wall struggling with something. You just want to enjoy the software first of all, and then tackle the more challenging cores later. So like Atari 2600, that's quite an easy one to do. Go for the Atari stuff. So we've got Commodore there. I don't actually use these cores, but I like to see that they're there and people are working on it. It's nice to have the options. So I've already done a video on Doom because of the 25th anniversary this year. We've got Sigil, the extra levels from John Romero, so I did a video all about that on Android. DOS, disk operating system, old PC games. It's cool to see those being represented as well. Keep going down. Magnavox Odyssey, Mattel Intellivision, NEC, PC Engine, lots of Nintendo stuff. So again, it gets a little bit intimidating because you can see, well, the Game Boy has many different cores to play it, and I'm sure many people would argue what is best. I do think I use Gambat, but someone might say something else is better. Use what works for you. Listen to other people and try it. Just use ultimately what works for you. So we've got the GameCube and Wii there. That's only available on the 64-bit versions of RetroArch. It's great to see it being worked on. As far as I'm concerned, it still has graphical issues with a lot of games that I want to play, so it's not really a viable alternative at the moment, but it's great to see people working on it. We just know it's going to get better over time. So yeah, NES, Famicom, Nintendo 64, Super Nintendo, Super Famicom, lots of cores for that. I think I use SNES 9X for SNES and Mercury, BSNES Mercury Performance for Super Famicom. I could be wrong, but yeah, I think that's what I used. So Quake, yeah, I've done that, the original Quake and all the expansions. Scum VM, that might not mean anything to anyone, but they're the classic point and click adventure games like LucasArts did back in the day on computers. So Salamax, Day of the Tentacle, Curse of Monkey Island, The Dig, lots of cool games, Indiana Jones. So yeah, some of them are incredibly funny and they do hold up very well today. So yeah, some of these can be quite awkward to set up, and one of the moderators at the Hyperspin forum actually read up all about Scum VM. He wasn't interested in it until I figured out how to do it, and then when he knew, he thought, well, I'll write it up. So he gives me credit, but credit should go to him for actually writing it up, to be fair. I did a video a very long time ago which is now gone, so we thank him for that. I've got Sega Dreamcast there. It's kind of an interesting one as well. It's changed its name over time. It was Raycast, it's now Flycast. So this lets us do Sega Dreamcast and Sega Naomi and Atomic Wave. It's kind of awesome. Some people don't realise the Dreamcast actually lived in arcade cabinets as well as the Sega Naomi. We don't want to get too technical, but they're very closely related. And the GameCube, Nintendo's GameCube, actually had an arcade version of it as well to do Mario Kart in the arcades. So little fun fact. But yeah, we can keep going down. Lots and lots of different cores for all these different systems. So I think I will use Flycast as an example as we move forward. So download what you want, what you think you're going to play, what you've got the games for. I've already done this. So once you've got your cores downloaded, we can back out. So what I'm going to do real quickly is just load a core. So I'm going to push up because it's going to go straight to the bottom. A nice little shortcut. So yeah, I can say Flycast used to be called Raycast. I still have the old cores installed, but we're going to do Flycast. And the next thing I'm going to do is head straight into information, because this is the bit that gets left out in the other guides, which I think really should be talked about, the core information. So some people struggle and say games don't work, they don't understand why, but they don't come in here to see what the core actually requires because nobody told them to. So we can see supported extensions. Now guys will do videos and say, oh, they've got their ROM files or their game files. They never really say what extension they were using, so you don't know. But the extensions can vary from game to game, from system to system, as well as the system itself. So for Dreamcast, we've got CHD, compressed hard drive, CDI, bin, Q, GDI, and some people don't know what's best, but at least we know what is supported. What is super important is what's under the firmware section. These are really the BIOS files, the basic input-output system. These files essentially are what make the system we're trying to emulate. Without these files, the emulator just can't be that system. So for the Dreamcast, a lot of the emulators do have a built-in BIOS that kind of works, but you'll have issues with games. So although it says optional, I'd actually say, you know, it's needed. It's kind of mandatory to have the Dreamcast BIOS files and supply them yourself. So what we see here is DC/, so that's saying that these files must be in a folder called DC, and then the name of the file, DC_boot.bin. It must be named that, exactly that, for the core to recognize that you have it. Got another one, flash.bin. Got one for Sega Naomi. There's another one, AW BIOS for Atomic Wave. So yeah, I have the other ones somewhere. I just haven't put them into the folder because I don't really play those games. So it's incredibly important that you come in here and understand what's going on. We're just going to quickly go back to libretro, to my browser, so you can have libretro docs. So I'll put a link in the description. I know not everybody likes reading, that's probably why you're watching the video, but it does help coming here and reading up on the cores. So it does get divided out. We've got 4 users. We want the core library emulation, and then all the options we've got under here. So it's divided out. So we were talking about the Dreamcast. We know that's Sega emulation, Sega Dreamcast, Flycast. So this will tell us what we need to get it set up, what we need BIOS files wise, what features are available, where it does save states and stuff like that. So yeah, incredibly useful. Now although it says these required or optional firmware files go into RetroArch's system directory, we can actually specify one. Don't have to do that. So I'll show you how to do that in just a sec. But this is well worth a read. Anybody that's having issues, I suggest you have a read here first. Most of your questions have already been answered if you only read the manual. So we're going to go back into RetroArch. I just said that we can start specifying the directory for the BIOS files. Now if you're on your phone, you'll see that little cog in the bottom right corner for RetroArch. Give that a tap so you can get into the directory. So we're going to come in here, system BIOS. So I have specified where my BIOS files are in that folder. So within that folder is a DC folder that has all those Dreamcast files, and many other files in there. It just makes my life easier knowing they're all there for RetroArch to use. The ROMs folder has subfolders for all the different systems as well. All the games are located in there as well. Makes my life easier. We can see all these other options that have paths next to them on the PC, so it's just C, the C drive. But when I was talking about the Shield TV earlier, had you run RetroArch whilst it was on your adopted storage on external drive, all of these would have been kitted out to that drive, not the internal storage. And you do want to run it on the internal storage, so manually changing these would have been a bit of a faff. So aren't you glad you ran it from internal storage first, so it defaulted to where it wants to be? So we'll backspace, because that's literally all we want to do, is just sort out those BIOS files. Not all cores require BIOS files, but many do, so it's important you have those. So yeah, we don't want to get too geeky, but let's just go over some useful settings we might want to play around with. Stay away from drivers, because you'll most likely break something, but we will come into video. So we've got, most of it is kind of self-explanatory. It's pretty obvious what it's doing. Screen resolution, what is your display? Mine's 1920 by 1080, so that's what I've got it set to. Start in full screen mode, pretty obvious what that's about. So aspect ratio, many of the retro games are 4:3 aspect ratio, which is like a square, not the wide screens that we get today. So I talked earlier about those overlays to fill in those gaps, but you don't have to do that. You can set the aspect ratio to be 16:9 widescreen, or 16:10, or any other option. It really depends what your display is, and that will stretch the image across. Now, some people are purists and say you shouldn't do that, but as far as I'm concerned, as long as you're happy and having fun, do what you want to do. If you want to have it fill the screen, fill your boots. So that's the aspect ratio out of the way. Just keep scrolling down. Is there anything else? So yeah, okay, threaded video, hard GPU syncs. This stuff is quite geeky. It can help some games run better. So I ended up doing this for like the Sony PlayStation to do Ridge Racer. We had a competition at Hyperspin, and yeah, it wasn't running quite right, and I was trying to get a hot lap. So applying some fixes, and I managed to post a very good time. But we'll worry about that in a later video. It's not really necessary for you to understand now. We just want to get this work into place in games. So input, incredibly important. We need to be able to control the games. So I've just got a keyboard plugged in at the moment, and to RetroArch's credit, it's very good at picking up what controllers you plug in, whether it's wirelessly or you do it with a Bluetooth pad. So we're going to come in here, so max users 5. So we'll go down, look at some settings we might want to tinker with. So poll type behavior, yeah, I might actually set that to early. It depends on the latency, the input lag with your controller. So menu toggle, gamepad combo, very useful to do this. Left and right, select what suits you. I have start and select, push those buttons together on the gamepad to bring up the menu on the screen. On the keyboard, on the PC, I can just push F1, but I don't have that luxury on my Shield TV or on my phone. So useful to be able to do it through the gamepad. Just go through other stuff that we might want to have a tinker with. So hotkey binds, this is very useful. So you can read what's on the screen, but let's just say like quit RetroArch, that would be very useful. I can press escape on my keyboard, but on my Shield TV and on my phone, on the gamepad, I just have this bound to clicking the right thumbstick in, quite often called R3. So that's useful. Some of you might have kids that you want to play this stuff, and you'll know full well that they need to push every button, no matter what it does, continuously, and they could accidentally quit when they don't mean to. So we don't want any tears. So what some people do, keep coming down, is look for the hotkey option. So what you can do is set a hotkey. So let's say we set the hotkey to be the left trigger. So with hotkeys, you need to hold the left trigger, and then pushing R3 would quit. You're making a determined action to quit, so you're less likely to do it by mistake. Although to be fair, I can't think of any systems or any games that actually use the right thumbstick clicking as an input. Don't think there are any, but as I say, if you've got kids and you think they're going to click it, we can avoid them doing that. So we've got the AI service there. I'm certain RetroArch has already done their own video all about the translation service, but it does need a button bound to use it. So if you're really interested in that, you can go watch the video that they've done. So I've got user 1 binds. This is for all the controllers. I have up to 5 players currently. So user 1 device type. What happens in a lot of systems is that the left thumbstick can be ignored. It will just use the D-pad. So we can actually force the thumbstick to work by analog to digital type, and forcing that as the left analog can be handy in some situations. So we can bind the other buttons as well. To be fair, RetroArch does a pretty good job of it, but you might be playing, I don't know, Street Fighter, you're like, oh, well, this button is doing weak punch, but I want it to be hard punch, so I can do this super dragon uppercuts. So change it. It is possible to do save settings on a per core basis, so your key bindings can change between cores, between systems, but again, slightly more geeky, more advanced talk that we should probably save for another video. But the software will basically do it automatically. So those of you just trying to get up and going quickly, it's not actually too bad. So we've got configuration here. We can save the config on exit, which is kind of useful. But you might want to disable it. It's up to you. So on-screen display, we can, if you're on your phone and you don't actually want to have the touchscreen controls showing, you can turn those off because you're using the gamepad. And I don't really suggest you use on-screen controls. They're terrible. Get a Bluetooth pad. So user interface, you might be wondering why the hell my screen is purple and yours is bright blue. Well, I've come into the user interface, appearance, and changed the background color, the menu color theme to dark purple. Menu shader pipeline is the ribbon. I've got it set to that, just reminds me of the PlayStation 3. You can change it to whatever you want. You can change the menu icon themes, just personalize it a little bit, whatever suits you. It doesn't really make much odds. So is there anything else you want to worry about? I don't think so. So yeah, we did the directory, didn't we? So next thing we can talk about quickly is scanning directories. Now I don't personally do this, but you might want to. So what you can do is tell RetroArch where your games are. So I know it's on my E drive in this ROMs folder we talked about. Now I'm not going to scan anything because it would take a bloody long time. I certainly wouldn't scan this whole folder, this whole directory, but I would do subfolders one at a time. Most people, when they do online videos, they only had 2 or 3 games. It will speed up the process. But I'm not going to scan anything, but just so you can see what you would do. So we could scan the Atari 2600 games, but it is very important that you first download the cores. This will scan your games and try to associate them with a core that can play them. Once it's done that, you'll end up with more icons that are little joypads to let you know that that system has been integrated into RetroArch, and you'll see a list of the games that it found. When you've done that, the online updater can be used to download thumbnails, so you can get box art to easily recognize the games at a glance. So it's kind of cool. I don't personally use it because I use front ends, a very flashy way to show my games off, whether it's Hyperspin or Arc browser, stuff like that. So I don't need RetroArch to show me the games. I just need to know that the games play and they play well. So all I do with RetroArch for testing is just load content. So I can go load content E. Let's find ROMs. Let's do Sammy Thomas Wave. Talking about Flycast. So Fist of the North Star. Awesome beat 'em up game, a bit like Street Fighter, that was in the arcades and eventually they did a port to the PlayStation 2. So I select that and we're going to use the current core, Flycast. There we go. I'm not going to play it because I will get carried away and it'll be a very long video. But what I've done is pressed F1. But do you remember we did the menu select for the gamepad, start and select. So when we're actually in a game, we get what's called a quick menu. So we've got save states. We can just save a game at any point we like. We don't have to wait for the game to tell us we can save. There's options we can change. So tinker with this at your peril, but yeah, it can help. But again, this is more geeky stuff for a later video, but just be aware that these options are here. So there's cheats. You can rewind the game, you can alter your controls, swap if it's a multiple disc. So whether it's Metal Gear on the PlayStation, you need to swap from disc to disc, it can be done. Got the shaders, so just be aware that this menu is here. Go backspace. So that's the quick menu, and I think that will do. That will be the basics. I'll do another video. I think we'll start talking about the overlays and shaders eventually. That might be the next best step. But hopefully this has got you guys up and going. If you've got any questions, of course, there's always the Live Retro forums, or come to the Hyperspin community, our Android section there. We always try to help each other out and help each other along. There are no stupid questions. There are just stupid people who refuse to ask questions. So that'll do, guys. Have a great day. Have a great evening, whatever you choose to do after watching this. And I'll see you all when I see you next. Ciao for now.